Good morning. Good morning. We are going to just give a few minutes and we'll get started. If you can hear me, if you'll go ahead and make a note, either say hey back or make a note in the chat box so that I do know that you're able to hear me. Okay, Angela, you're saying that you cannot hear me. Raquel, can you hear me? I can hear you guys. Okay, awesome. So we've got Raquel, now Angela. Okay, awesome, perfect. All right. And then the next piece, can you see my screen that says 7 levels of the MREA? Okay, awesome. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and mute you guys, and yet you've done this enough. You know how to unmute, or you can make a comment at the bottom. I just want to make sure that we've got, we can move through this and we can understand it. So, all right. So we should have a few more people jumping on, and as long as everything goes according to plan, this is being recorded, and yet it is what it is. So the technology piece of this. All right, so diving right in. So you guys have seen this material before. Now, again, we ask that, this is as a MAPS coaching client, you are seeing this, and it is not something that we disseminate to the general public. It is something that you're getting first access to because you're a MAPS client. So we're going to jump in right at level 1. So level 1, right, is this is you. You don't have an admin. It's just you. Now at this point, right, this is you're doing all that you can do. You probably hit a wall, right? Your family life may be in crumbles, business in crumbles, and it's Friday night at 10 o'clock and you're having to do a file, or Thursday night at 10 o'clock you're doing a file for a closing the next day. Typically 30 to 45 range, when you're in that range consistently, you're ready for an admin. And we want to make sure that we're not hiring too late, right? We want to make sure that we're hiring before we need that person, because otherwise we're too busy to do anything really well. So we want to make sure that the rule of thumb is 30 to 45. Okay. All right. Now, the next piece that we want to go to, so that one most of us are familiar with, so we want to go straight to the second level. All right. So now you've got an admin. So what does that look like? Now, so again, between 30 and 45, you're going to hire an admin. Now, some people actually, like Tim Heil's a great example of this. Monica Reynolds was sharing this on some training that she was doing. Like right from the beginning, he understood his job description was to be a salesperson. So he immediately hired. And those are like the lions, right? They understand their job description. They're comfortable doing that. They go ahead and make that hire. The biggest piece before you hire, you want to go to career visioning at a minimum of 1 time, and yet you want to keep going back. That career visioning is going to stop you from doing a lot of the, just the mistakes, because we're not looking at the whole picture. So make sure that you're going to career visioning. Now, some of the common mistakes at level 2 is paying a percentage to the admin. Please do not do this. That assistant, because what happens is then that assistant has to learn to live through feast and famine. And yet they are your secret weapon. And if they wanted to do that, they would just go be an admin as well. So we want to make certain that that they are paid, and there's somewhere going to be. Now, every area is different. So, in Louisiana, where I'm at, Raquel, Angela, where you are in Arkansas, you're not going to be paying what would be the same salary as somebody that's in California. And yet, you're going to want to pay somewhere in the range of, $10 to $15 an hour. Typically, salary's great, so you're not micromanaging all of your time. And because if the job gets done, great. If it doesn't, my expectation is you stay and you complete that job, right? And then with that, I'm saying, and I know that everybody on this call, we understand, to be fair, we're not going to work somebody 80 hours a week and pay them, as minimum wage. So just be cognizant of this. Now, you always pay a base and then you pay a bonus. Now, the base never changes, the bonus might raise. So for instance, once they're with you 60 to 90 days, then maybe they get a bonus on every closing, and that every closing could look like something from $25 to $50 per closing. So no raises based on the base, the bonus, you're in a bonus based on production. Now, one thing that you can do as I'm going through this, if you have questions, type them in or unmute yourself and ask that question, and I'll make sure that I address those. Now, the third level, we're going to go immediately, just jump to that third level. Well, we jumped ahead and we're going to jump back. Okay, awesome. Okay, so now we've got the third level. Now it's you, a lead admin, and a transaction coordinator. I do want you to understand this. These are interchangeable names. So for instance, your first hire, because they were doing admin stuff and transaction coordinator stuff, the transaction coordinator may be the lead admin, and maybe your listing manager is below them, right? So just think of these names as placeholders. Now, typically where we see the biggest mistake in the third level is that an agent has one admin and then they hire a buyer's agent instead of that second admin. Now, what this says to me is they really don't have the production for that second or for that buyer's agent. And so this causes a huge, lot of problems. Now, so we want to have, and then the other problem that you run into is they have both admins reporting up to the agent. So, you want to make sure that the second admin is reporting to the first admin or some combination so that you only have one person that's reporting to you in this at the third level. You also want to make sure that they have defined job descriptions and defined job duties. Like Monica Reynolds shares, right? She's been training admin for 25, 30 years. When they job share, it becomes a recipe for disaster. Now, there's a difference between job share and everybody knowing what's going on so they could jump in if somebody was out sick or, something like that. And yet with the job share, you got to be careful because everybody thinks the other person took care of it and nobody does. And now it's falling apart. Now, so, okay, so you've got two admin reporting to you, or one admin reporting to you, and you have two admin on your team. Now you move to the fourth level. Now the fourth level is when you bring on a showing assistant and a lead manager. So this is the same thing. Okay, here we are, fourth level. Now we have two admin, and then we add the showing assistant for the lead agent. Now, some of the mistakes right here is an agent thinking, whoo, I'm at the seventh level, right? We've got somebody that is setting appointments, and I've got a showing assistant, or, sometimes people jump straight to a buyer's agent here and they say, I'm seventh level, and they get to check out. That's really not what this is. This is continued leverage so the business can continue to grow. Now, some agents don't have a desire to go to seventh level, and that's okay. You're making a really good income, typically really good profitability at this fourth level. Now, the OSA or ISA, they're making inbound, outbound calls. They're reporting to you. Your showing assistant is reporting to you. So in this level is the first time you have more than one person reporting to you, and now you have three people reporting to you, right? You as the lead agent, you as the rainmaker. If you have, all 4 of them reporting to you, it's going to be very discombobulating. So make sure that those are the only ones reporting to you. Now, before I go to the 4th level part 2, is there any questions? Okay, I'm going to keep going. All right, so now we're looking at the 4th level, part 2. Now you see that there's a lot more, right? A lot more balls in the air here. And at the same time, you were only being reported to, only 3 people are reporting to you. We want to, this is very, very important. Now, when we look at the 4th level, part 2, how do you know when to hire a lead manager, right? Now, typically somewhere, let me go right here real quick, sorry. So how do we know when, you know, some of the questions comes up to how do we pay the lead manager, right? And basically start out there, the OSA, ISA. So I just stepped back to 4th level part 1, guys, because I wanted to share this. How do we pay that lead manager, OSA, ISA? Typically, and they're doing outbound calls, inbound calls. Typically, they are a $2,000 base, and they get 10% of any closings that they generated, right? They set the appointment, whether it's through your database or through circle prospecting, web leads for sub owners. So they get a base and a bonus. Okay. Now, the other piece, so now we're going to go back to the 4th level, part 2. Okay. So now as you're growing, right, now your lead manager hires, or your OSA, ISA, right, they become your lead manager and they hire an OSA, outbound sales, or an inbound sales, depending on, or somebody that does a combination of both, depending on what the business needs. Now, the lead manager is still being paid because they're still generating appointments. They're still being paid their base of $2,000, and they're getting paid 10% on anything that they create the business on. The OSA, ISA is doing the same thing. Now, the difference is the lead manager now gets a 5% override on anything that the person they're managing is setting, right? And that they're closing on. So now they get their 10% on anything they're doing and 5% from the OSA that they are leading, hiring, training, right? Now, one of the things that Monica Reynolds shares with her mega team is you always want to make sure that when an ISA, OSA, when they set an appointment for you, the main agent, the lead agent, you're always going to call back and share and like pre-qualify for the appointment. So the script Monica gives us is this, you know, hey, I'm Monica Reynolds, or hey, I'm Olivia Roberts with Keller Williams. I know you were just speaking with my ISA, Anthony, and just wanted to ask you a few questions and get to know you a bit so that I can do an excellent job before I come out. So this is you pre-qualifying to ensure that it is a visit, an appointment, and it's not just a tire kicker. Because otherwise you might go out and they're like, oh, who are you? Oh, well, I don't. So you always want to make sure that you're doing that, okay? Now, your lead buyer's agent, they probably came off of your bench. So it was probably your showing assistant that has transitioned into your buyer agent role. And then they are going to actually train the showing assistants, the buyer, you know, their showing assistants, right? They're going to hire and train them. Now, the lead manager has now hired the OSA, which we just went through that. Now, what is the compensation for the showing assistant? So if the lead buyer specialist, right, any of the activities generated by the ISA, the website marketing, open houses, you name it, right, from the team, then the buyer's agent would get a total of 35%. They could take the deal and work it themselves, or if the showing assistant touches it, they would keep 25%, and the buyer showing it would be 15%. Okay, so that's a total final company generated 35% for the buyer's agent. And I apologize if you can hear my dinging in the background with the text messages. I'm not 100% sure how to turn that off on my computer without turning my sound off. So we're just going to ignore that and keep moving forward. Okay. Now, and so the 25% to the buyer's agent, 15% to the showing partner. Okay. So total of 35. Now, one of the things is a lot of times we start out with thinking, 50-50 for the buyer's agent. Well, the challenge is if you pay 50% to the buyer's agent and you pay 10% to the ISA and 5% to the lead manager, all of a sudden there's no profitability, right? So you got to be really cognizant of that. So some of the common mistakes is overpaying. The other common mistake is the lead agent has everyone reporting to them. The other piece is not firing fast enough. So that ISA, know that in 30 days, you're going to know if they're going to be your person. That means that they have been, they're learning the scripts, they're writing the scripts, they're coming to you, they're lead generation, right? So you're going to know in that first 30 days. Typically the challenge here is we don't fire fast enough. So make sure that you are slow to hire, quick to fire. Now, sometimes the question has come up, Monica was sharing this with us, right? Can you overpay an ISA? Not really. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you live in Louisiana, right, where I live, and the average sales price is $150,000. Well, and then we compare that to somebody in San Diego, and their average sales price is $700,000. Well, obviously the cost of living in San Diego is much higher, right? She was sharing, if you live far away from the beach, to get an apartment, you're going to be spending $1,500 to $2,000 a month. If you lived on the beach, it'd be $5,000 to $8,000. So the cost of living is going to accommodate that 10%. So you don't really have to worry about that. So, if an ISA is, you're closing 2 deals a month from the ISA, which the intent would be to close a lot more, and yet let's just say it was 2 a month, the ISA would have made their base plus 10% in Louisiana. So they would have made about $3,600, and the agent would have made $16,000, right? So the 10% still holds true. Now, one thing, well, no, that's where we'll stay right there. Okay. So now again, you want to pay attention to the area that you're in and your price point. One of the biggest reasons why the buyer's agent isn't just 50-50 all the way across the board is because then if you're feeding them, and Monica says you're feeding them like a little birdie, right? Any incentive to go out and open house and door knock and friends and family, right? If they're at 50-50 and you're just giving them stuff, then they have no reason to go bust out and find new business for themselves. And the intent is to teach them to hunt and fish. So if they're at 35% from anything that the team gives them, then anything that they go out and hunt and fish for, then they would be at 50, then you could potentially do 50% for that if they're going out hunting and fishing for it, right? Because then they would basically, instead of the OSA or ISA lead manager getting 10% for bringing that lead in, that lead buyer's agent would, which would give them 45%. So just a general rule of thumb. So, all right, I'm just checking the comment box to make sure. Raquel, thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're getting great information. Okay, so now if we look at the 5th level part 1, right? 5th level part 1. Okay, here we come. All right. Your listing buyer's agent has come off the bench, and they've become your showing assistant has become your lead buyer's agent. Now you have your business is continuing to grow, so you've added more people to your operations. Typically, and again, remember that it's a model, so it's a rule of thumb. It doesn't have to be exact. And yet it's a rule of thumb. So typically every 35 to 40 extra pieces of business, you're going to need another admin, right? Somebody to take care of those people. So, okay, so in this model, if you'll notice, we've added another transaction coordinator. We've also added a, now you have 2 outbound, inbound sales, right? And so other than that, and so then you also have a director of operations. So it's no longer a administrative assistant, right? It's no longer a lead admin. Now they're the director of operations because they have more than one person reporting to them. Now the cool part is you are still only having 3 people report to you: the lead manager, the director of operations, and the lead buyer's agent. Those are the only 3 that are reporting to you. So now we're going to move into the 5th level, part 2. Whoop. Okay. Now, this is the first time that you're going to bring in a listing agent, right? So up to this point, you've been going on all of the listings. Now, that doesn't mean that you didn't train the buyer's agent to handle a listing when you're out of town. That would actually be, or maybe your director of operations when you're out of town. That could be, and yet until now, you're not actually hiring somebody that's going to take listings for you. Now, the reason that you're waiting that long to do it is because that is your most leverage and where you're going to make the most leverage time-wise and money-wise when you're handling the listings. Okay. Now, something that we want to look at in that 5th level, part 1, and you're probably in part 2, you're going to be somewhere around the 125 unit range up to 200, right? Now, of course, this depends on the leads, the listings taken, and that type of thing. So one of the questions, well, what do you pay a director of operation? So again, the raises are on bonuses. And again, don't give away a percentage of the business. Because what happens then is your admin's not going to like when you go take a 4-day trip or you go on vacation because the business isn't making money. So they get bonused on the closings. Now, this is typically where people start seeing profit share coming into the business. Now, so if you're interested in creating profit share in your business, I'm going to say go. There's a chapter on this on the MREA, in the MREA. Go read that. Now, this is an abbreviated version that I learned from Monica and Diane and Joe Bogar. So how do you do this correctly? First off, number 1, read that chapter in the MREA. Number 2, you might want to set aside a certain amount that you make before you distribute profit share. So for some, it's 150,000, some 250. And let's say, so we're going to use 250,000 for today's example. You make 250,000, then you distribute profit, right? And then anybody there has to earn to get into the profit share club, right? So they've been with you probably at least 3 years. And at 3 years, they would get 3% of the profit, 4 years, 5%, and it would cap out somewhere between 10 and 15%. Now, you want to also be aware of who you're giving profit share to. Do you give profit share to the person that runs errands? Probably not, right? Now, would you give profit to that showing assistant that then became your lead buyer's agent, and they have, brought in business? Absolutely, that would be, because we want to, to retain them, we want to pay them well. Some of the things that you must have here is a policy and procedures manual. You must have standards, right? Like 2 hours a day of lead generation, that's a standard. At least 1 to 2 closings per agent per month, that's a standard. And then the biggest challenge with profit share, the biggest mistake is overpaying, right? Or too much when they didn't earn the right to get into that circle. So just be aware of that when we start looking at profit share. Again, if you have questions, stop me or type them into the text box. So part 2, level 5. This is where we are, part 2, level 5. Okay, now we continue to hire new talent, and a lot of times that talent is coming off of the bench. So that listing agent that you're hiring, that might be from your OSA or ISA. It could be one of your, could be your lead buyer's agent that has earned the right to become a listing agent. Now, how much do you pay? Now, if you as the rainmaker are still taking listings, then typically what you're going to do is have the new listing agent practice and take the lower price listings. Now, this is a tip from Monica Reynolds, right? So you hire the listing agent, you attach them at the hip. This is the tip. You attach them at your hip for at least 50 appointments. And this is something, Monica Reynolds, Joe Bogar, and Diana, with working with the top teams, Tony DeCello, right? You attach them at your hip for at least 50 appointments. Now that person is taking notes, they're asking questions after, and then you start peppering in. So, hey, you're gonna handle the CMA on this appointment. Okay, now you're gonna handle the pricing on this appointment, right? Now, as the, because the whole point of this is the new listing agent is gonna be more successful and better than you, right? You're gonna teach them the good habits so that they're doing things better than you. So you're not gonna step away from this fast at all, right? Now, the listing agent lead, the suggestion is that they would also go out and bring in business they wouldn't just go on appointments, they would actually be lead generating as well. Now, the recommendation is the listing agent would get 10%. Now, some people are going to immediately go, wow, that's ridiculously too low. So there are some other models. Now, you know, Lance Loken, his is 10%. And they're doing huge, huge volume. Now, let's say in your area that doesn't make sense or something to that effect. So the other model examples would be like a lead specialist would get 25% if they generated it. I'm sorry, if the company generated it, right, with FSBO's expired door knocking, right? Now, if they went out and found new business, then they would be at 45%. That way you're still teaching them, you're still encouraging them to go out and fish and hunt, right? It's a good thing. Now, at this point, right, you're still in charge. Now you have 4 people reporting to you, right? So you have to make sure that your schedule allows for you to hold people accountable, to train, to coach. And then, cannot stress enough, put them in training, right? Have everybody take bold, including assistants, so they understand. Have them in the group coaching calls. There's now a mastery coaching for director of operations, and the lady that leads that, like her group does 1,400 deals a year, right? So make sure you're investing in training and education. Now, the cool part, if you think about an outside industry, you have to build your own training modules. Well, at Keller Williams, right, we've done it for you. So you can plug them into Bulge, you can plug them into Maps, you can plug them into group training, you can plug them into the training at your market center, your regional training, right? Take advantage of that, because that becomes your training platform for your team. And yet you didn't have to go out and invent it. You don't have to have an in-house person, right? Like, so make sure you're leading into that. Okay, now always, never more than 50% are you going to give away. Because if you do more than 50, you're going to be giving away the profit. Now, the listing specialist, right, when you bring them in, their minimum production standards. Now, you know, Joe Bogard, Diana, and Monica, right, the listing specialist must bring in a minimum of 4 to 6 a month. And yet, really, the minimum is 10 listings a month, and yet you have to start somewhere. So you want to make sure, right, do you have the lead generation systems in place to do that? So as the lead agent, let's say you only ever took in 6 listings a month. You don't bring in a listing agent and say, but you're required for 15. Now, it might be building up to that number, and yet, are your lead generation systems in place? What can you guarantee that the systems can set for that person? Right? All right, so I know I'm moving through this fairly quickly, so are you sure that nobody else has any questions? Any questions? Can you still hear me? You can still see the screen. Okay, awesome. Just double checking. Okay. Now, we're going to move to the 6th level. All right, now the 6th level, so now you have, right, the director of sales. You've got your lead buyer's agent turned into your director of sales, right? They run that part of the team, right? You also have a director of lead generation, right? They are directing the OSAs and the ISAs. So notice that you still only have 4 people reporting to you. Now, this starts looking at the expansion, right? So one of the biggest pieces, you must have a hub that can manage a lot of business. So the hub has to be able to support a lot of business. So how do you do this? Well, you do it gradually. So interesting enough, right here in this 6th level, you would have you would have more people in your hub with this director of operations at the 6th level. So again, because it's been between about 45 and 50 transactions for every admin. So in this model, you're probably doing, you know, let's say you're doing 200 transactions, you would have 4 full-time assistants, right? Now, that doesn't mean, you know, when you're into the 300s, you might have 5 to 6. So it's because eventually, right, more people, they can handle more transactions, and that's a good customer service. And yet, to make sure you have that good customer service, you know, 5 to 6 when you get into 300s, or their customer service is going to suffer. Now, the lead listing agent, right, in this, you know, they may be the one, they may have come off the bench. You've got your director of sales. They were probably your lead buyer's agent. Now, your director of sales, they are typically, they have a base. Typically, it's like $3,500 a month to $5,000, and then they're paid 5% of any closed transactions, right? Now, this is the kicker. Past 4 closed transactions. So, for instance, let's say you have 4 agents on the team. You've got a minimum of 1 closing per month. So they get started paid on the growth. So on the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th plus transaction, the director of sales would be paid 5%, right? Now, the director of sales could still cherry pick a few of the transactions. Maybe they want to work with some of their past clients or high dollar people, and they could cherry pick and they could do and keep the entire money on that transaction, right? If it was set by them. Now, we're going to look at the 6th level, part 2. That was, so no, sorry, 7th level. What? No. Okay, I skipped ahead. I apologize. 6th level, part 2. I confused myself. Okay, 6th level, part 2. Okay. So if you look right, you're going to see the, right beside, you're going to see the expansion business, right? So now this is the director of expansion. You've hired another OSA, ISA on the far left. And this is where your hub is, again, you're going to have more people than this in your hub, because one of the things that we know, talent will leave if your hub is not taking care of the files properly. If they are not giving good customer service, talent will leave. So you have to make sure your hub is strong. Okay. 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 Now, if we look at 7th level, you've now replaced yourself. You've hired a CEO. Now, the CEO runs the entire ship. Now, interesting enough, you know, Monica Reynolds, right? She's the CEO of the Chris Heller team. And we have and she was talking about where some of the best CEOs through her 25 years of coaching have come from. And, you know, she's like Mega Camp, Family Reunion, Agents in the Marketplace. It's amazing where you can find them. Sometimes it's outside of the real estate industry. They come from a strong business background. Maybe they've strong management. They know how to read P&Ls. They know how to interpret them. They know what it takes to move a business forward. Now, this is the thing is they're going to, you know, you're going to pay them more than the average bear, right? Because you're looking for somebody that can do more than the average bear, right? So they're typically earning as a base like $150,000 and up. There's even some that make $450,000 base, right? It depends on, you know, is the agent completely stepping out? Are they stepping up? Are they stepping to the side? Are they stepping to the back? So, you know, completely out, let's say that the only interaction they would have would be with the CEO at weekly or monthly meetings, looking at the P&Ls, making sure the business is growing, right? Maybe stepping back is they're doing weekly meetings. They're still in the thick of things, and yet the CEO is running the place, right? Now, something that you have to be aware of here, Do you have your systems ready for 7th level, right? You have to have 5 solid, strong generation systems, strong, an unbelievable database, right? And then you would, and those things must be in place. The other piece is that CEO would be attached to you for probably a good year or more, at least a year, a year. And because the biggest mistakes at the 7th level is not making sure that that CEO is, running it before you step out. The other thing is always make sure that you pay yourself a salary and then profit share, even in this example, because that's what you get paid for having grown the business to this point. And how do you know if you've hired the wrong CEO? The culture has suffered. It's changed from where you were. The standards are changing. The business isn't growing. That's how you know that you've hired the wrong CEO. Okay. All right. That takes you from level 1 to the 7th level. So I would love to hear some feedback. What jumped out at you? What did you learn? What did you not know? What questions that you have? So hit me. All right, so now I'm just going to start calling people's names. So Angela, what are you taking away from this? Raquel, what are you taking away from this? All right, Raquel, so a lot of steps to grow the business the correct way. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, it's a question. When would, from Angela, when would a VA come into the picture? Early on, I assume, but wondering if it would be a second admin. It could be, absolutely. So some of these second, third, fourth admins, they could absolutely be a virtual assistant. Craig Rieger, I believe everybody beyond, and maybe even his first is virtual assistant. So absolutely, yes, and great question. Absolutely, VA could come in here at any point. And yes, it could be that second admin. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Is there a typical timeline for when these different levels are achieved? Great question. So, no, there's not a typical. I will say that, like, you look at Lance Loken, he went, he's only been in the business 5 years, and look at his, they're doing thousands. It really depends on how fast the business is growing and what your end result. So think back to when we said, what's your 10-year plan? Well, if your 10-year plan is to 7th level your team so that you can go on to do other things, then you would, knowing that, okay, well, I've got to spend a year with my CEO, so I've got to do this in at least 9 years, and yet you go, well, wait a minute, if my, what if, if that CEO isn't right and I have to rehire, well, then you're going to probably want to start, you want to be here in year 8, right? And so that I would just say, figure out if that's your 5-year, 10-year, 15-year plan, and then back your way into it. The other piece to be aware of is so we always talk about the 7th level. There are some agents, and this is absolutely fine, that don't ever plan, at least until retirement, to hire a CEO to run their business. So they, and then some people that may not want to do expansion. So depending on where you are, and I'm sorry, my computer just stopped. You might be really happy and want to stay somewhere at the 4th level until, and I'm going to say retirement or whatever, right? And then you would, you know, replace yourself somewhere in here with a CEO. Or so just keep that in mind. But great question. All right. Anything else? Okay. So now tell me what I'd love to hear from you guys. What's your takeaway? Like, what do you now know, like maybe getting ready for your next hire? Is this something that's going to be beneficial to you? Do you now know, like, wow, at Mega Camp, I need to be picking some of these megas brains, and right, because this is a model, and yet there, you know, there's probably going to be additional questions for you guys to answer, and finding people that are doing, you know, in your same price point and things like that. So, okay, awesome. Yeah, payment models are very, yeah, thank you. I thought that was huge whenever, as we got those shared with us. Yes, the payment models are huge. Okay, so what did you learn today that you're going to implement with your whether it's your next hire or your next business? The units prior to moving to the next level. So Raquel, is that your question, or is that was that something that was helpful to your takeaway? Okay, awesome. Yes, the units prior to moving on to the next level. Yeah. Because this way, again, you're leading with revenue. Perfect. Okay. All right. If there's nothing else on the MREA levels, what I would like to open it up to is, do you have any questions about Mega Camp next week? Because I know, you know, we're all registered, we've got plane tickets and all that. Is there anything that you need to know, like just in general about Mega Camp? While I'm waiting to see if y'all have any response, I will tell you this. Remember, on Tuesday, we are going to have, that's when we do the mastery event. So I look forward to seeing you guys on Tuesday night. And I'll send out a text to everybody in my MAPS coaching schedule, and we'll meet somewhere there that evening. I'd love to introduce some of you guys, or all of you guys, to each other, so y'all can continue to create some networking and role play and things like that, as well as just spend some one-on-one time with you guys. So, okay. All right. So, so was this beneficial for you guys today? Okay. Very. Love that, Raquel. Thank you. Always love your energy and passion. Thank you, Angela. Okay. Awesome. The last thing I will say here, and I really appreciate you guys for like the no one-on-one coaching calls this week. We're dealing, we're okay. It is what it is. And I really appreciate you guys. I look forward to seeing you next week. I am available. Like Angela, I hate that you and I haven't had a chance to talk because you've been gone on vacation for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever. And I'm sure you had an amazing time. You got to see your son. I'm very excited about that. If there's 3 weeks, yeah. I believe we sent you the recording calls from what we did with your admin. So if there's anything for you, give me a call. We can carve out some time to talk. Otherwise we'll see each other at Mega Camp next week. But yeah, I'm definitely here for you guys. All right. On that note, we're going to end today's call. Have an amazing rest of your Friday. We will see each other next week, and just keep crushing it. Talk soon. Thank you, guys.